We got 4:30.
So you think she's.
Roll call.
Commissioner Bailey,
Here.
Commissioner Bunting,
Here.
Commissioner Gay,
Here.
Commissioner Sapsy,
Here.
Commissioner Owens.
Here. George, can I get you to pray for us?
Bow your heads, please. Most gracious Heavenly Father, we just thank you for the day and the blessings that you give to us. And we just want continued prayers, Father, for our servicemen and women overseas and at home. Also our first responders, Father. Please bless and take care of them. We ask, Father, during this harvest season that you would protect our farmers, as it's very dangerous to go out there and harvest the crops that one day, next year sometime or whatever, we're going to be using, and we just appreciate their efforts. And Father, we ask tonight that you would bless this board as we're about ready to look at the budget and approve the budget and go on with next year. And we just want to make sure that we do things that are pleasing not only to you, but the folks of Gratiot County. For it's in his name we pray. Amen.
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 Will you join us for the pledge?
To the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic
for which
it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Move the agenda.
Moved by George, supported by Steve to approve the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Public comment, anybody? No? We need to go into a public hearing. Need motion there?
I'll make a motion that we take this time to go into a public hearing to discuss the budget.
Second.
Moved by George, supported by Tim to go into a public hearing to talk about the budget. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Comments on the budget?
On the top of page 3, the projected general fund deficit. I don't like that word deficit. What does that mean?
Deficit means we are going to spend more than we are going to bring in next year. And yes, it is a taboo word in the budgeting world, the government world. But I did go on to explain why we are going to be looking at a deficit next year. And that is because we are going to take some of our savings that we have accumulated over the last decade,
That's
which
in the general fund.
that is in the general fund.
So
that's
this is, it doesn't drain the general fund.
Absolutely not. We will still maintain at the end of next year approximately $7.5 million in our general fund balance. We will spend just under $300,000 of that for purposes of planting seed money into the airport authority fund and to pay off our OPEB deficit that we have. Our OPEB is our other post-employment benefits that were promised to employees. The total amount necessary to have in a trust fund to cover those benefit promises, I believe, is about $2.9 million. And currently we have about 2.5 million in that account. So we would be taking $400,000 from our general fund and sending it to this trust fund. So we no longer have to put money in that going forward. The OPEB fund, we just started funding that approximately 5 years ago. Prior to that, we just paid expenses as they came up. State of Michigan changed the laws and the requirements, and we have to put this money away. So in a matter of 5 years, we have put all the money away for this liability that we've had to do. So outside of those one-time payments of $1.4 million, everything else would be our normal operation expenses, but we're adding those two one-time payments to next year's budget. $1.4 million, or 1.4 million one-time payments is causing us to have an approximate $300,000 deficit. And I'm not going to hide that we have a deficit. I want people to know, but I also want them to know why.
And we also have those funds covered in our fund balance.
We do have two drafts of the budget that was posted in board book. The first one was posted last week. The second one was posted yesterday. There were updates. I'm just gonna go over those updates real quick with you from the changes from last week to this week. The first item was, we just received word from the state of Michigan what the probate judge's salary would be. So I made sure to update that in our budget. In our resolution, on page 6, there's a table for all of our millages that we had. While I updated the millage totals in the paragraph, I did not update the millage totals in the table, so I made sure to update the table. The reason that changed is because we added the central dispatch millage to next year's tax roll that was voted on at the last election. I entered that into the table, but I did not add that into the total. So that total of 8.5172 mils is accurate now. There were some dates that needed to be updated that I updated. Central Dispatch just passed their budget last Thursday. So there were some adjustments to Central Dispatch budget that I updated in here. I erroneously left the delinquent tax fund off the summary on page 32. So I added Fund 516, the delinquent tax fund, back in there. The detail was always in the budget, but when I got to the summary, that got deleted, so that is in this draft. And I had a meeting with Central Dispatch, or not Central Dispatch, but Commission on Aging on Friday, and they rearranged a few of their expenses that ended up being a wash.
I guess, Chris, going back to what Tim was originally talking about with this deficit. So from what I'm understanding, had we not given this seed money to the airport and paid the OPEB balance down, right? We would have had approximately,
That back.
I mean, we'd had a little over $1 million going into our fund equity.
Correct.
We've been adding an additional to the 7 point something we already have. I just think it's important that we all understand.
The fund balance.
Yeah, that instead of adding $1 million to the fund balance, we're putting $1 million seed money into the airport and trying to get our OPEB so that we are at or near that 90%
Fully
funded.
funded, yes.
Yeah, which is 90%, right? When you're considered 90, you're fully funded, right?
Let's be 100% funded.
State of Michigan.
I know it's a moving
See
target.
that way, yes.
Yeah, I mean, there's a letter in here from Eaton County about that very thing of how do you get there and stay there? Because everything's changing. The market changes. You're.
Retirement's the same way.
Yep.
I mean, we started out, we brought everything up to 110%. And over time it goes to 90.
Yep. And then to 85.
I would beg to say, if we hadn't have done that, we'd have been down below 50%.
Oh, for sure.
So we'd have been in a world of hurt.
Yeah.
So, and we alleviated, but through that, taking that bond out for that 7.5 million,
Mhm.
we eliminated having to pay such high premiums back to the retirement fund. So we paid that back, plus the retirement fund has still saved money.
Yeah, well, I understand all that. I'm glad that we are able to put that money towards that OPEB fund.
Yeah.
So that we stay in good standing, I guess, so that we don't end up with what George was just saying with there's extra fees and stuff. If you start dipping below, you're paying higher rates and we don't want to be doing that. We don't have to.
So again, approximately 40% of our tax base is renewable energy right now.
Mhm.
So renewable energy does not appreciate, it depreciates. Not like the real estate that we have, that is the other 60%. Real estate typically over the years, it trends up long term. Where, as we know, our renewable energy depreciates all the way down to 30% of the original tax base. So while we do have, the revenue coming in from turbines, the revenue coming in from solar, we want to invest those into these one-time projects that we can eradicate debt and liabilities in the future. Because if we invest depreciating revenues, depreciating tax bases into operations or salary, eventually those revenues will disappear, but the operations and salary are expected to stay. So we don't want to get ourselves into trouble that way.
I just wanted to thank you for explaining it a little further, because I just really think if anybody's watching or listening to this, want them to understand that.
The majority of this budget book, we have walked through in detail already over the last 6 weeks.
Mhm.
The one thing that I do like to go through with the board and with the public is the budget transmittal message.
Mhm.
That is page 1 through page 4. And essentially what that is all of these numbers explained in words. So if you're not a numbers person, these are the pages within the budget to read. So again, our retirement expenses, looking at page 2, what the challenges in this budget are. The retirement expenses from the OPEB and for our pension trust funds are still over 10% of our general fund. That is very large. So you think of that, it's almost like having a car payment if you have your own personal budget. Our retirement expenses. 1.1 million of that is the bond payment for the pension bond that we took out. The pension bond will be paid off in 2026. We make the last payment in 2026. So this is 2025's payment. We have 2025 and 2026, then that is paid up.
This one's for 25 that you just budgeted.
Yep.
We have one more essentially after this budget.
That is correct. And then that $1 million payment is gone. Again, repairs and upgrades to the courthouse is a very large number. We're gonna start working on some of the historic side of the courthouse next fiscal year, which there's a lot of red tape when you start remodeling, reworking historic side. We have been very successful this year in our light replacement. We're going to continue pushing that project into the next year, along with window replacement where that is necessary. You see our revenue breakdown. It ran extremely close to how it's been breaking down in the past. Salaries and wages fell to 59% of what the total general fund revenues are. If you can keep salaries and wages and benefits under 60%, you are typically in excellent position. Once that starts creeping up to 62, 63, 64, that's where you want to really keep an eye on it, because salaries are expected to continue to climb into the future. That's just the way it is. They appreciate.
Can I ask you too, how many employees do we have now? Do you know that right on page?
That is actually in the book. And I don't have the number of employees. I have the number of positions. But it's not totaled up. But on page 25, you'll see the the FTEs that are authorized for each department.
Okay.
And one of the changes, you'll see in the top right, MSU Extension. We used to have 1.5 employees that were county employees at MSU Extension, and you'll see that's 0 now because those employees are now employees of MSU, and that was a change in the contract that was brought to us probably exactly 1 year ago. But this, and I wish I had that tallied up for you, but I don't.
I have to ask you a question. So that tells you how many people, but you've got 4.10. Does that mean
There was a part-time person.
for 10 hours?
So buildings and grounds, we have a lot of people that do a lot of different jobs around here.
Mhm.
And so they charge a certain percentage of their time to different departments. We have one department head that oversees buildings and grounds, but he also he does permits and he does soil erosion and he does blight. So he splits his time in between 4 different departments. So when you see a 0.1, that means someone is spending 10% of their time working on this specific department.
And the same thing, like a 0.48, that means 48. So
So yes, that is.
almost 50% of the time.
The soil erosion officer works 48% of a week. So that would.
127.71 is your total for your FTEs. If you want a number, there you go.
Okay.
So our ARPA funds, we are expecting our ARPA funds to be spent up in this upcoming fiscal year. If everything goes right, we would like to have them all spent by the end of this calendar year, by the end of December. But if we have that money under contract, we can carry it over past December 31st. Our goal is to have it all appropriated, spent, have our reports done and submitted to the feds. Again, something that we always need to keep an eye on is the child care fund, because that is a fund that has the ability to be an extremely large cost to the county. The child care fund is where we actually spoke with DHHS at our last meeting. They came in and had some contracts approved. But on top of that, we also have we pay for detention center that's through there too, and those can creep to $14,000 a month now. And we're always cognizant of the condition of the courthouse. We know that there are places where we would like to improve. And that's where our capital project list that is also in this packet that we have gone over in detail should lay out. When we approve the budget, we don't approve the detail. We don't approve each general ledger line item. We approve the expenditures by department within the general fund, and we approve the expenditures by fund for those other funds. That saves us from having to go back and do hundreds of budget adjustments later on throughout the year. Which outside of that, I'm open to taking any questions. There was one decision that I am going to ask this board to make. If you flip to page 33, that is our general fund by department. Yep, right there. So there is one department request that came from district court for $9,000 that I did not approve, and that doesn't mean that it shouldn't be approved. I didn't approve it because this request specifically has to be approved by the Board of Commissioners. This $9,000 is a request for overtime for the magistrates. The magistrates, are not, it's not for the department administrator. It is for employees in district court. This was approved by this board last year when the court administrator came in and asked for overtime for his magistrates. The way our policy is written is that if it's not going to be a reoccurring overtime that's been approved by the board, that this board has to specifically approve it. And this is not an overtime request that should come to you every year. It should eventually work itself out. So it's up to this board to approve the additional $9,000 for the district court.
I have a question.
Mhm.
Okay, this is for the court there. Is this for all the courts, anybody that works overtime?
No,
Or
it's,
is it just for them?
it's just for the district court, some specific requests.
Just for the magistrates, right?
Yep.
Not for the clerks, but just just those that act in the role of magistrate, correct?
What is their, I can't remember.
Sheriff could probably explain a magistrate's duties.
Magistrate can serve as a judge in certain proceedings where they can arraign people, listen to speeding tickets, etc. They cannot sentence people or hand out fines and costs, but they can do some of the jobs that a judge would do. Also, magistrates are on call on weekends for search warrants, blood search warrants, anything you would need a magistrate on for a week.
Okay,
And I'm assuming that's what this overtime is for, is those nights
Oh.
called in the middle of the night, which is outside of their normal work hours, and when they're coming in on a Saturday to do a search warrant or to do arrest warrants that need to
Or
be.
arraignment even on.
Yeah, if there's a major case that has to be arraigned within a time, especially on those holiday weekends, that can get tricky because you gotta meet state law, so. I'm assuming that's what those are for us.
Oh,
so do we have to come back out of the session to do that?
After the public hearing, well, we won't. After the public hearing, that's when the board would actually
yeah.
approve it.
This $9,000, is this for, you've got it listed under 24, 25, so I assume that's going forward?
That is for next fiscal year.
Okay. All right. Now we're not going backwards and paying something. We're
Correct. It is not back pay.
Okay, got it.
And page 41 is the detail for the district court, if you want to see where that would fall into page 41. So there you see the $9,000 request. So at this point, I'd open it up to any questions from the public or from the board. Felt like this budget came together very well. I know that we implemented a lot of employee. We had the wage study mid-year. We've had the negotiations with the sheriff's department. Where we put pen to paper and projected and extrapolated but when the budget came together with all of the changes that we had, I felt like it came together very well.
It looks like this this will be our third year then with this. Correct? Right?
Yes, sir.
Do you think? it's
Okay, so
safe-
the middle one is the budget.
Okay,
So, to the left, that's
Budgeted.
zero.
okay.
I would think if they have to come in on weekends and nights, that would really help courts stay up to date. I think they'd get way behind otherwise.
There are some things that you've done in law.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
In a certain time.
It's mostly by law, not by,
Yeah.
Thing.
yeah, it's more by law than by just.
Yeah.
Yes.
Nobody's coming in on a weekend because they want to make overtime. They have to by law. That's the only reason they're coming in.
Probably coming in on the weekend.
There's nobody here to bug you. Okay.
Remember that.
The offenders don't listen to Saturday or Sundays. You can't do that.
If it is the law.
You just can't do that.
Been the law for
Now, if there's no more public comment, we need a motion to go back into the regular meeting
Move.
Second.
by George, supported by Tim, to leave the public hearing and go back into our regular meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Keegan.
Yeah, Keegan.
All right.
Approve the millage rates before we approve.
Yeah.
So I have a 2024 tax rate request form. Nothing crazy with this form. There has been no reductions to any of the millages from last year to this year. There has been one new millage, the 911 millage that was voted in August, and that is for 0.6 mils. So that has been added to this report as well. Other than that, if anybody has any questions or anything like that on the millages presented.
We have a motion to approve the millage.
I so move that we approve the millages for the fiscal year 24-25.
I'll second it.
Moved by Steve, supported by Jan, to approve the millages for 2024 year. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Keith. Okay, consideration to approve the 24-25 Gratiot County budget.
Make a motion that we approve resolution 24-327, a resolution to adopt the Gratiot County Budget, General Appropriations Act millage rates for the fiscal year operation of October 1, 2024 through September 30th, 2025.
Support.
By George, supported by Steve, to adopt the 2024-2025 Gratiot County budget. All those in favor say.
Roll call, please.
Roll call, okay. Getting ahead of us here. He didn't have to kick me that hard.
No, I'm sorry. Commissioner Bailey,
Yes.
Commissioner Bunting,
Yes.
Commissioner Gay,
Yes.
Commissioner Sapsy,
Yes.
Commissioner Owens.
Yes. The budget is approved.
Now, do you need a separate for the $9,000 for the magistrate?
Yes, we would need to amend that.
Okay. I so move that we make an amendment to the budget for the amount of $9,000 for the district court's budget to account for overtime for the magistrates.
I'll second that.
Moved by Steve, supported by Jan, to approve $9,000 overtime for the magistrates. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Okay, consideration of the consent calendar.
The consent calendar.
Work.
Moved by George, supported by Steve. Approve the consent calendar. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Administrators report.
All right, well, we do have some pretty exciting news related to our equalization department. Keegan has been working with me the past couple days to actually take his services private. I know that we have talked about this in the past. We've talked about this probably for the last year. But let the commissioners know that this is going to happen, and he has gotten to a place where he's ready to start negotiating and putting a contract together to continue to serve as Gratiot County's equalization director. However, he would not be a Gratiot County employee, so I'm very excited to bring that to this board, the next meeting. So I'll keep you updated with that, and possibly we could have this converted to, as of October 1st. So if the board agrees with the terms that we come up with. So which I am 100% sure that you'll be happy with the terms. I have been asked to, again, promote the free tire collection that we have this Saturday, September 21st. That will be at the
Gratiot County Fairgrounds.
Gratiot County Fairgrounds. We have registration information online. I see all over the place online. It is hosted by the Gratiot County Conservation District. We will be promoting this again on our Facebook page, but it sounds like there's still quite a bit of room for people to sign up and bring tires. So
Did you say the time?
8 a.m. to 3 p.m.
It's important.
So
And there's still time to put reservations in, but not reservations at this time are not necessary.
okay, very good.
Because we only have like 800 tires registered.
That's
And
fine.
we can take up to 2,000 tires.
They doubled it, I think, this year, didn't they? Wasn't that the goal? Last year they filled up so fast, they doubled it. Or added, I know they added more.
Yeah, there's
this year.
Yeah. So, yeah. It's been a very good project. I was really associated with it last year and we had excellent turnout and we had a great crew. And there's time to volunteer to stack tires if anybody wants to do that.
Mhm.
Most of us in this room aren't really of the age where we want to stack tires, but there's little young people out there that might want to take advantage of it. But it's a good cause. Gets rid of a lot of tires in the county and a lot of mosquito makers.
Yep.
And as this last summer proved with the avian flu and all that other stuff, and we got equine flu, that comes from the mosquitoes. Not good.
We have had a lot of progress with the airport too, and I'm gonna save 95% of that for the airport meeting in a couple of weeks, but I do want to share with this board that we met with the Bureau of Aeronautics last week out at the terminal. And they did let us know that while there was record turnout for the terminal grant program at the FAA level, we were one of 3 airports that submitted an application in Michigan with a terminal study. So that was a very good number for Gratiot County Airport, that we are one of 3 to submit a study along with our app. So I'm very excited about that. And the state of Michigan very much supports this project for Gratiot County.
Fantastic.
Good news.
Outside of that, I've been working on the budget, so I don't have any more to update.
George, what do you got?
Well, let's see, on the Monday to the 9th, I normally have 2 meetings, Hamilton and North Star. Hamilton did not have a meeting. They're having their meeting tonight. So guess what? I won't be there. North Star had a meeting, normal course of business, talked about different things, did talk about the blight again. And I think they're getting ready to move forward with a blight situation that they have in their township. On the 10th, I attended Lafayette Township and Wheeler Township. They are, and this is a common thread. The cemeteries are becoming a real talked about in the township meetings anymore because it's so expensive for the upkeep of the cemetery. But really the only way that most people have, they don't run a millage for it, so it has to come out of their general fund or plot sales. Well, with more people going to cremation, they're only going 1 plot sale instead of 2. and all that. So it's been a struggle for a lot of different townships. And, I'm afraid that some of the townships that don't have a lot of, extra funds, they're gonna probably have to start running a millage or something for their cemeteries. It's too bad, but, you gotta remember by law, that's a perpetual care. In a township or a city, they have a cemetery, you've gotta keep track of that till the Lord comes back. So that could be tomorrow, could be 2,000 years from now, none of us knows, but we are pledged to take care of those cemeteries. So it's been an ongoing thing. I don't have any good answers for it, but it's just been a problem. Then on, let's see, what day was that? Let me check here. There was one other event. Oh, on Friday, the 13th, Ithaca had a Gratiot County, Veterans, appreciation at the football game. And so I attended that with a lot of other veterans, and it was a good ceremony. The crowd appreciated all the veterans. They gave us good applause, and so it was a good time. And I got a cookie. But in Ithaca won. Then that was it.
What all did you go to?
I went to the Emerson Township meeting on Monday, September 9th. Hosting that bunch, they meet around a rectangular table. They talked about dormant accounts that move money around to maybe interest or money market, right? They talked about their fire truck for their township, but other townships and budgets for fire. They mentioned this isn't Emerson Township. They mentioned Ashley's getting a solar farm. They mentioned their toilet doesn't flush in the woman's bathroom. Talking about cemeteries, Emerson Township has 2 cemeteries, actually. There's one on Tyler Road. It's pretty big, too. And they have to remove trees, and the upkeep is, noticeable. Repair the storage shed. And the last thing about Emerson is they got a perfect score on their audit by state. Chris, do you know?
That's good.
That's good. Well, I don't know. It sounds good. Okay, I went to the mental health meeting September 12th. And they talked about they had a Hope in the Park September 10th World Suicide Prevention Day. This was at Wright Avenue Park. They had music and hot dogs. They have a bunch of these little yellow flags, like in front of the Wright Avenue building. Also, there's a building on State Street, that new building with Michigan Industries, and a bunch of yellow flags for to make you aware of suicides, which it's a solution. It's a maybe a temporary problem, and it should be dealt with. And there's a telephone number. I didn't write it down. Hopefully you're not put on hold. They also talked about their budget for fiscal year. Their dates line up with ours. Kyle Trifle talked about parenting, work on parenting skills with people. The new building for the mental health is going to be on the other side of the parking lot. If you're familiar with Wright Park, there's used to be tennis courts, and then in the wintertime, they flooded it for the ice skate arena. So I assume the new building will probably be there, and they're gonna build a new building, but they're gonna keep the old building until the new building is complete. And then I guess they're gonna level. So that's it.
Steve?
Had a busy September 9th, due to the holiday being on the second. Parrington always moves, there's the second Monday. So that gave me 3 of them that all started at 7 o'clock. I went to New Haven first. They are, working on, their zoning ordinance. They're interested in what we're gonna come up with as a county as well, because they're revamping their, ordinance for solar, wind, and battery storage. So they're interested in what the county's gonna be doing and hoping that it will all work in together.
Revisiting that very soon.
Yeah, and I had talked to you that day actually, and so I had updated them on that. Then I went to Newark. Newark are prepping their new staff, basically working to get, as there's gonna be quite a turnaround at Newark Township, so they're working on trying to get all the loose ends. There's one issue that involves the county, out here just west of town. Started several months ago that they're hoping that can get resolved before the new board comes in, or the new people come in, and so I don't know what the status of that. Right now, it's sitting at the prosecutor's level to be dealt with. So they want to try and make sure that gets done before they, before the board switch, if at all possible. Went to Parrington. Parrington continues to work on their, the process of checking all their, for lead pipes. It's a process, every village in the state of Michigan has to do this, and they're working through that to make sure that they've recorded the right number of residences, and they have to check them not only at the street level, but also at the entry into a residence level. So, and they're also replacing all their water meters right now, so the house end's really easy for them. It's making sure that they check the street level. The 10th, I went to the Ashley Planning Commission. They are working with, talking in talks about, they'd like to try and get a bank brought into their town again. They were having a meeting, I believe, with John Collison from Commercial about a bank being in the village of Ashley. So they were going to talk about where they would put it, if it would be out more in the new area where they're trying to develop, or more into the downtown area. That left that, went to Alba Township. Alba Township wanted me to thank everyone on the board once again for the ARPA funds. They are ecstatic that they got that money and it's already spent. They had, actually, it was kind of neat because Tom Bradley, that you guys all remember, was, we did the presentation in February. He actually ran the meeting because Roger was not able to be there. So, have you ever been to a meeting that Tom runs? It is on time and you're moving along. So I think it was the fastest one North Shade may have beat it once, but I think we were like 34 minutes and we were start to finish wrapped up, done. And so that was interesting. On the 12th, Dave and I actually were last Thursday up in Alma at the library for the Healthy Pine River. I was very impressed with the meeting. A lot of people spoke on behalf of the condition of the river. They had a contractor company there. Basically gave a small presentation on some different options they have. But anybody who's familiar with the Pine River has changed drastically. And it's really changed a lot in the last 20 years. There was a gentleman there who has photographed the river for years. I think it's 22 years now that he's takes a picture the same day at the same location. He's big into bike riding or cycling. And it's sad. It's really sad to see what's happened to the amount of silt and things that are in the river are causing the river to change quite dramatically. And then just from the amount of runoff, there's lots of concern with the E. coli levels. I didn't realize they were as high as they were. They were reporting that they don't recommend, like they were so high at one point in time this summer that they didn't want people basically even to be splashed with the water if you were kayaking. It was to those kind of levels of the E. coli in the water. Over 1,000 and anything over 300, I believe, is where they start being like, you can't go swimming in it if it's over 300, and it was over 1,000. So that was quite alarming that it was in that kind of shape. They talked pretty extensively about the dam in Alma and what are their options. Alma's dam is obviously above the St. Louis Dam. And so for them to talk about much with the Alma Dam, they have to make sure that it coordinates with the St. Louis Dam, which is used for hydropower generation. So they have to be careful with all of that. And they have an inlet that the city can use for water if their wells were to fail. They have that option still. They haven't used it in years, but it's like they said, you don't give those up. Once you have one of those in a river, you don't give that up because it's impossible to get them back from the state. So it was interesting. I learned a lot at that meeting. I've been going to the upper Pine River meetings where we have another meeting coming up where we're going to talk about, some of the agricultural runoff and hopes to be able to come up with some sort of a plan to limit some of that, because that's what's causing some of these problems. Obviously, there's problems that come into our county that we don't control here, but it sounds like they're willing to work with all the counties above us as well as what's going on. But I mean, just the numbers they were talking about to clear the sediment that's in the Alma backwaters impoundment. I mean, you're talking $100 million. Today's funds, and that's not even the schedule, and they aren't sure what they could even do with it. There's so much of it, 6 to 8 feet in 140 acres of that's a lot of sediment. And whether some of their options are totally take it out and then what do you do with it if it's safe to put in other places to use? If there's heavy metals or anything in it, you can't. You gotta take it to a landfill, or can they somehow create an island in the middle of the river and use it as like a city park or something of that nature? And then there's all the what happens if they do something like that? Who owns the property? Where do the property lines end? Because it all depends on different pieces of property and how it was. Do they go to the center of the river or do they go to the shore? There was all kinds of discussions on that kind of stuff. So it was very interesting. And then last night I went to North Shade. Obviously last month I told about they had a meeting after their meeting in reference to the big power line that's going through. This month they had a planning commission meeting prior to the county or the board meeting. And so Consumers was there, and one of the gentlemen that's been at all the Township Association meetings, and I don't believe he's ever been in here to speak to us, but he was familiar with all the commissioners and came up and spoke to me. They're talking about also the future of land use, and he explained a little bit, had some pictures of what a battery storage unit looks like for the solar and wind program. Because when your power usage, they're generating power when they're generating power. If the wind turbines are turning and they're on, they're generating power. The solar panels, if they're absorbing sunlight, they're creating power. they can use that power when we're really using power during the daytime. What do you do with it at night with the stuff that's being generated when the usage rate goes down and the production is still high? That's what these battery storage units are. You explain them a little bit. They're large buildings, look like kind of like warehouses that have all these compartmentalized uh, units that have the batteries that actually, it's not just one huge battery, it's all these different small like cells. And they have to keep them at a certain temperature, so there's a lot of air conditioning units and that sort of thing to keep them cool. So they typically are like 5 acres that they utilize for them, and there was, all kinds of discussions. Then there was a gentleman there who, I don't know if it was their township attorney, I never got to hear his official title or name, but he was talking about coming up here real soon. The state of Michigan, as we all know now, can dictate where these solar and wind and things go versus that used to be all handled locally. And he talked about the differences and how important it is for your townships to have and counties to have a good, rock solid plan. And I'm really glad that we're going to be looking into this. Because there's a couple of different ways that this can be handled. When you work with a company, a big company like Consumers or like Tri-County Electric is in our county as well. When they're working with us, they are part of your community and tend to want to work with the community. Because they're here long-term. They're here for, basically as long as we're going to be here, they're going to be here. They like to try and do the best they can to follow these county and township ordinances to the T, where let's say some of the companies that may come in to do an install of something and they're here and then gone, they can revert to the state. Well, if you've ever looked at the state's mandates and even what the county has now and what our townships have now, I'll just use a solar thing. The state does nothing for landscaping around it. It's just, they're there. Our ordinance requires the fence, certain height, has to have certain shrubbery planted around it for curb appeal, if you will. The states doesn't require that. So they said it's important to have a good one that these companies do want to try and follow. And it gives you a little bit more teeth, I guess, if it comes down to it. So it was interesting to listen to all that. But other than that, they're very proud of their new building and trying to decide if no one's ever rented out the old building because there wasn't running water or a bathroom or anything in it. So now that they have all those modern day amenities, they've been approached about renting their hall. And I told them that most of the townships do rent their hall. So get in contact with all the other townships. Some of them have some very nice new halls similar to theirs. Get with them on their fee schedules and how they handle cleaning was a big discussion. So that's what's going on in my neck of the woods. Oh, and Washington Township started construction on their township hall expansion. We were supposed to have a photo shoot, but the lady that's taking the picture for it's sick with COVID, so we got to do it next week, I believe. So I wasn't able to go to that.
Jan, what do you have?
Okay, I went to a meeting, I think I told you guys about it, child advocacy the last time I was here, our last meeting. And they were looking for volunteers, so I volunteered last Tuesday in the park. And I had a really interesting job. I taught kids how to make, I'm not sure what you call it.
S'mores?
No, you couldn't eat it. It was like, I don't know what you call it, like all gooey, but you don't eat it. So it was real interesting, the stuff you had to use. You had to use like shaving cream. We used glue. The glue went in first, then the shaving cream. And then there was your stuff for cleaning your contacts with it. just real unusual stuff. And once you put it in, and then you put coloring in it, and then you had a spoon and you kept stirring it and stirring it. Pretty soon it's like all over, like, and kids love to play with it and make things out of it and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, that was kind of fun. I learned how to do that and played with some kids. And at the same time, I was supposed to be at Bethany Township. I very seldom ever not be there. So I will let them know next month that I was learning how to make goo, or I don't know what they call it. You know, Terry, you have kids. Slime, that's what it was called, slime. Yeah.
You say there's slime, what do they call the other thing? Elephant toothpaste, all these different things that they call that stuff.
Yeah, it was interesting and fun. Especially, we had it everywhere. It was all over the place. But anyway, I had a good time there. And other than that, that's the only thing I have. The other thing I want to talk about, though, is I am going to the conference. And I don't know why I got down Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It's starts Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and it doesn't start until noon. But I'm gonna go home and look at my paper again. I've got the paper from here, and I had that, and I looked at it just a day or two ago and thought I hate to go at 6 o'clock in the morning. So I'm really tickled that the first part of it is not till Tuesday at noon. So that makes it a little bit easier to get there. I can get up, and head on up. It's about a 2.5 hour drive. But I was gonna ask, is there anybody else that wants to go?
I just think registration is closed for it now.
Oh, it is?
It
Okay.
is, yeah.
So I'm sure there'll be a lot of people there. But anyway, I'm gonna take my iPad, and if there's anything very interesting that I think that you guys might want to know, I will take it and tape it and bring it back.
Well, and I'm sure that they'll have the presentations that you can look at on YouTube.
Yeah, I got a whole, I just picked it up out of my mailbox. All the things that they're gonna have. And so I'll go over that and see what I wanna sit in on.
Okay, that all?
That's it.
Okay. Well, I went to Seville and then I went to LEPAC, which don't ask me what that stands for, but it has to do with emergency preparedness. And you just can't, well, the sheriff would know. Can't believe all of the stuff that goes on behind the scenes to be ready in case of an emergency. I was blown away by all the preparations that they do, and I think Fred Harris is doing a very good job. Guess we didn't have anybody in that position before, did we?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, oh yeah, Mike Solis was there, yep.
And LEPC means Local Emergency Planning Committee.
And Pine River's meeting is tonight, so I often don't make Pine River's meetings. But if there's anything that I should know, Kevin Beeson calls me up. So that's a good thing.
I have a question for you. When is the next county where all of the commissioners, everybody in the county?
Overnight.
Pardon?
Next Wednesday, the 20th.
Or next Wednesday,
Next Wednesday, the 20th?
Yeah, that's the next,
next Wednesday.
up at Pine River, that's the
Yeah,
next,
I just got an email today.
6 p.m., correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
And you're supposed to RSVP so they know how much chicken or pizza they have. So. Well, that's all I have. On to new business. MSU's extension contract.
Thank you. The operating agreement for extension services between the county and MSU is what we have before us. And so that is continuing on that partnership that's over 100 years to provide programming in agriculture and agribusiness, children and youth, development, health and nutrition, and community food and environment. And on that note, just as an example, for the first 7 months of the year. There's been 43 agriculture and agribusiness programs or meetings offered that the residents of Gratiot County participated in. There's been 18 programs or meetings that they participated in: community food and environment, 33 children and youth, and 40 health and nutrition. So I just wanted to let you know those numbers for the first 7 months that I have. And that doesn't take into consideration farm visits, indirect contacts, and all that good stuff. And anyhow, so MSU provides that to the county. In exchange, the county provides an assessment, which is a base assessment of financial amount. In addition to that, additional funding for 4-H program coordination beyond the 0.5 that's in the original assessment. And then, as Chris noted earlier, provides support staff, and that is now through MSU paid staff. So how are all those financial aspects paid for by the county? It's through the millage. So we're on the millage with the economic development, and our portion of the millage goes to help fund those things. Now, those are not the only things that the millage funds. We have other budget items that are all within that assessment amount, plus our other budget items, including like rent at the office that we have. That's all within the budget amount that was passed within the budget earlier today. So that's the arrangement, the provision of services, and then the financial aspect that comes from the county, in addition to the support of the office and support that you all give us in many ways, internet, et cetera. That's all laid out in this agreement. It's this substantially the same agreement with just different numbers since the last year and the year before that, et cetera. There's been very little change. As far as total dollar amounts within the agreement that go to those assessment amounts, if you add up the general assessment, the additional 4-H coordination, the support staff amount, I believe it's $166,089. I think our total budget amount is somewhere in about $258,000 plus, give or take a nickel. And then there is a surplus still as far as that goes with the millage dollars that are brought in. So the action that I'm asking for today is that the board approve this agreement, the operating agreement between MSU Extension and the county, and that if you approve it, sign that and return an electric copy to myself, which I'll get signed by someone from MSU, and then return it to the county for the files. And that's it.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we enter into the agreement with the extension, MSU Extension.
Support.
Moved by Jan, supported by Steve, to endorse the extension contract, MSU extension contract. All those in favor say aye.
I,
Opposed, nay. Motion.
Thank you very much.
Fair Labor Standards Act rule change overtime eligibility update. Sheila.
Okay, well, you all have gotten my memo about this. Largely, this is informational for you. So the Fair Labor Standards Act, FLSA, decides what the minimum payments are. So essentially minimum wage, but there is one for salary employees as well. I gave you kind of the history of what those thresholds have been. We are now in a situation that we had brought in some department heads before this threshold changed, and they were made salary employees. So we've had to go back and evaluate based on these thresholds, whether they are going to be better being an hourly employee or a salary employee. So this is just informational, but something that I found in our actual policy, it said the dollar amount, which used to be accurate, but has not been since prior to 2020. And so what I am asking is that we change the verbiage that removes that specific dollar amount and just relates to the law and that statute.
Looking for a motion to.
Right at the bottom.
Yeah, just take care of this language that's.
Absolutely.
I so move that we update the salary basis policy for exempt employees to eliminate the dollar figure per week and just follow what the law states.
Moved by Steve, supported by George to adjust the fair labor standards that we used to have. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay.
Can I make one quick additional comment about MMP? Yeah. So it did just get approved, our notice of intent. And when that happened, that kicked in a rule that we needed to post notification. So that was posted last week. It will be in the newspaper coming up. It was also on Facebook. So if anybody's asking because they're seeing this notification, they don't know what it means, nothing has changed. It's just another step in the process. So that's what the note is. So if anybody has any questions, they can certainly reach out.
So it's me. I'll say call Sheila.
Absolutely. Please do. Sapsi did just that.
It'll work out wonderfully.
Broadband Equity and Access Deployment Program. That. You got that?
BEAD, that is the BEAD program. If you'll remember, this is about the federal initiative to expand broadband in rural areas. 123Net is a company that has shown interest and they've applied for funding to do work in Gratiot County. They're just asking for a letter of support to be signed to send in with some of their applications. So they want to do work here and they want to bring in funds to expand broadband. I thought we'd give you the opportunity to allow Dave to sign this if the board chooses.
Where are we at with like I have wonderful internet at my home, so where are we at the rest of the county as far as,
Depends on where you live.
yeah.
It's very around the cities,
Mhm.
close to the cities, you got good internet.
Mhm.
As you expand out, it gets a little wonky.
My phone service sucks, but
Yeah.
it's internet's wonderful.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Well, we don't have an accurate map because everything was recorded as covered. So that was our issue. That's why we couldn't get companies to come in here last year or the year before. Because according to the state of Michigan, Gratiot County doesn't have any broadband issues.
Oh.
But this company wants to come in and fight that.
Make a motion that we allow for the letter of support for BEAD.
It's BEAD.
Broadband, whatever it is.
Broadband, the access and development.
Support.
Well, I'll support.
Go ahead, Tim, sports.
Moved by George, supported by Tim to
Internet, 21st.
have a letter of support for BEAD to work on broadband equity for Gratiot County. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Leaves us down to budget amendments.
Yep.
Usha.
So before September 30th, we have to adjust or amend our budget to ensure that none of our programs go over budget. It is actually baked into the Michigan compiled laws that it is against the law for the county to go over a budget. The reason that's against the law is because they don't want administrators and finance people going and spending money different than how the Board of Commissioners have approved it. So if something doesn't turn out correct, they require someone like myself to come to the board to show you, okay, this is why this program went over the budget, this is why this program went under budget, and just have this conversation with you publicly.
It's a good law.
It is a very good law. One of the issues with it is that makes it difficult is I need to project the rest of the expenditures for the year. Because as of September 30th, we are not done spending money for this fiscal year. We have bills that'll come in up to 60 days after the end of the fiscal year related to this year. An example of a bill would be like your power bill, your consumer's bill. You get it after 2 weeks after you use it, things like that. So that's why I don't bring those to you sooner than I do. As we go through these, I also want you to know that some of these you have already approved, but I want to show the board, now I can see for myself where we started, what was our original budget that was passed, and where we're going to end. I want to see all of those moving pieces in one document, and that's what this allows us to do. So at the beginning of this fiscal year, we approved $15.4 million in our general budget, in our general fund budget. Having come through this in detail over the past week and a half, I expect that our expenditures are going to settle at approximately $14.3 million, which is 1.1 million under what budgeted. A lot of that has to deal with, we've been able to pick up some of our capital project expenses with COVID funds. A lot of it has to do with our department heads and our employees really buy into doing everything that we can to spend the taxpayers' money right. Some of it, unfortunately, you're familiar with how we're having a hard time filling positions, specifically at the sheriff's department though too. So there's salaries that's been budgeted that have not been spent. And that'll be evident when we go through these. So that said, if I could direct your attention to the spreadsheet for the general fund expenditure, it should be right after the memo that I just covered. So this is built out very similar to how we just looked at the budget. We have our budget column, what I project we're going to spend in that, and then the amendment that I'm asking for. I would just want to point out to you also that the wage study and the new contract for the sheriff's department, neither of those have been adjusted in the original budget here. So when we see the original budget is the old wages prior to those adoptions. As I was going through this again, I was really impressed with our staff, with our department heads, with the decisions that we made, the way that we operated this year, and how it turned out. It was very easy to balance the general fund budget without having to increase expenditures. Our departments have very good relationships with each other. Our departments also do not participate in end of the year money grab to spend all of their budgeted. They know if they need something, they can come to us and talk to us, and we will appropriate that for that. So that's just another feather in Gratiot County's cap, that a department will go under budget and not worry about having to spend 100% of it.
We don't penalize people for doing a good job.
That's correct. But a department that does go over budget, they can borrow appropriated funds from a different department to help cover that for this year, because they know in the next year that department might need those funds in the future. So the general fund budget is just, we have certain increases and we have certain departments in red where we see savings. And when you flip all the way down to the bottom, you see that we balance that out easily. Typically, the very last department, 101-999, appropriation to other funds. Typically, within that department, we recognize significant amount of savings. And I'm able to grab some of those savings. For example, we have appropriations to friend of the court, we have appropriations to child care fund, we have appropriations to capital projects in that department. And I'm able to pull a significant amount of going under budget in that department to help spread to ones that went over. While we did recognize savings in that department, it wasn't necessary to dip into those savings. And as I said at the beginning of this conversation, we budgeted 15.4 million this year in the general fund, and we're expecting to spend 14.3. So we are looking to see some savings in those.
How much did you say again? 14 million?
14.3. So you'll see, salaries was the number one driving force for the majority of these amendments, because we did not budget the sheriff contract or the wage study. I'm gonna go ahead and flip over to the special revenue budget amendments. That is the last spreadsheet that was part of this package. So these funds are different than the general fund. The general fund all has the same funding source. And those funding sources are typically not restricted. Each one of these funds has a restricted funding source. For example, central dispatch cannot share its money legally. It cannot share its money with the sheriff deputy millage fund. The sheriff deputy millage fund cannot share its money with Parks and Rec. Each of them has to maintain essentially their own bank account and funding sources. So if somebody goes over the budgeted amount, there's only two ways to remedy that issue. That particular program needs to raise additional funds that fiscal year to cover for that. Or they need to have a fund balance. They need to have money in the bank that they're able to spend for whatever projects that they did for that year. Worst case scenario, general fund money can be transferred to one of these funds, but we don't want to do that because these funds are meant to be standalone. So throughout this worksheet, you'll see which funds went over. I put a column in there for how those additional expenditures are going to be covered. For example, central dispatch, we're looking at $80,000 amendment request. The source of those funds will come from FB, which stands for the fund balance.
Well, that was Facebook.
So then the next column, out in fund balance as of the day that I did this. I'm asking for an $80,000 amendment. It'll come from the fund balance, and the fund balance has $484,000 in it. So that's how we read.
That's pretty no brainer.
So if you see negative numbers in there, for example, Fund 282, secondary road patrol. Secondary road patrol, we get a grant from the state and the rest of it has to come from the general fund. So we will be making a transfer into secondary road patrol from the general fund.
Which secondary road?
Secondary roads are the county roads, the non-city, non-village.
Routes, non-US routes, it's two people that are assigned to patrol county roads.
So
Gravel roads, basically.
we,
Not gravel, you got Washington and Lincoln and they can go out and handle complaint on them, some US's if they need to be.
An
The
emergency.
grant is focused for secondary roads, which are not US routes.
Public Act 416, they call it the 416 unit sometimes, and I think it started in 1974, if I remember right, because
You're close.
it's 74, somewhere right in there is when this all came about, and part of the reason we're transferring funds in is they still operate off of some figures that were relevant in the 70s that have not always been
They
updated.
bumped it up. in the
Thank God we have a new
last year.
funding source,
Yeah,
yes.
they
It's a new
have
funding.
another funding source, so
Yeah.
they bumped it up a lot in the last year.
Yeah. A reliable funding source that should be good every year. This has been a moving target for years.
so I'm going to open this up to commissioner questions and eventually I'm looking for a motion to pass these amendments and adjustments.
Engine and defense,
Yep, I was just gonna ask that.
amended budget, $150,000 grant increase. That's money that they increased to their own budget, or how'd that work?
So the Indigent Defense Fund is getting very, very large. The program is growing exponentially. The county is required to put in their maintenance of effort from 5 years ago, I believe, which is approximately $87,000. The general fund puts $87,000 into that, and then the state covers the rest of it. I believe the budget for it this fiscal year was around $810,000. But it's in our contract, if we go above that, that the state will still pay 100% of it. So that's what that means.
Oh, the,
Increase, so they had to fund.
oh,
The
the,
state has to pony up to the rest.
that has brackets around it, so that means that what? It's, 280.
Currently, it has a negative cash balance in it because the county has not transferred their $88,000
okay.
into that account yet. I was burning down the state of Michigan. 'Cause once I put it in there, that fund will own the interest
It's a lot.
that it generates. We can't pull that interest out, so.
I have a question.
Yeah,
Medical examiner,
yes,
do we still have the same one over in Flint?
yes, we still contract with Genesee County Medical Examiner Office.
I'm wondering if we can't find someone even closer. That was kind of an issue earlier this year. I actually went and talked with our sheriff about it. And,
You have to have a forensic pathologist, and there's not a lot of them in the state. You have to go Lansing, Flint, or Grand Rapids.
It doesn't help you out.
I mean, we can send it there. I thought he had to come over here to, pronounce somebody dead. He doesn't have to do that.
You have medical examiner investigators.
Oh, okay, then we're all set.
Yeah, they work underneath his authority as those.
Correct.
Yeah,
And
okay.
they're really paid through my office.
Mhm.
But then medical examiner is through the county, but they're under my direction in medical examiner at Flint.
Okay, okay. Because for some reason, I thought he had to come over and pronounce somebody that there was an accident. Okay. Okay, that's the only question I had there.
Good to see increased revenue coming in from both the jail, from their, looks like commissary sales, and then the airport. The increased revenue coming in from the airport.
Necessary is the sales of.
Oh, yeah, yeah. It's-
Population goes up, they buy more stuff.
Oh, you got a lot of people in jail right now.
The probate court, juvenile court, and raise the age. What's that mean?
Okay, Raise the Age is a newer program where people 18 years old are treated as juveniles. And the state of Michigan is funding this at 100%. So we break it out from the juvenile court because it has a separate funding source.
Okay,
This is the reason he says it's new is the state law changed years ago. It used to be once you met the magical age of 17, you went to adult jail, and now they've changed these, the state law has changed that we continue to clear through the year of 18, they are treated as juveniles.
okay, what about the kids that, I just seen this on TV or just heard it on TV, where that 14-year-old went, where's that at?
Well, they can still be charged.
It was
They can be involved in these crimes, yeah.
Yeah, Georgia. He's gonna be tried as an adult.
Different states have different laws.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So we need a motion to approve the budget amendments.
A motion to.
I'll support it.
Moved by Tim, supported by George, to approve the budget amendments for fiscal year 2023 to 2024. All those in favor say aye. Those nay. Motion carried. Any unfinished business?
I would make a motion that we would, suspend the regular meeting and go into the finance meeting.
I'll support.
Moved by George, supported by Tim, to suspend the regular meeting and go into the finance meeting. All those in favor say aye.
I,
Motion carried.
All set?
Yep.
All right, we've had no additional drain prepayments. I know I just got some letters though from the drain office that they're gonna start doing some assessments, so we might see something coming up in the near future. ARPA funds, we have gone over $7 million in distributed ARPA funds now, so that's a new milestone. The majority of what we have left over, I would say approximately 1/3 of it is still under ownership of the county, and the other 2/3, the majority of it is township hall renovations or buildings that we're waiting for bills to get. Expenses in, for whatever reason, it says June, it should say August, related to the Hamilton Town Hall and St. Louis Fire Department. They finally got their truck that they ordered years and years ago. No new expenses in the Woodhill contract, because we're waiting. Waiting for BSNA to implement our new chart of accounts. We should have that done in October, which is good news because then it would be done before our audit and we won't have an audit finding for having an outdated chart of accounts. We do expect expenses to start ramping up though, as they start combing through our books to go through some of our year-end stuff in preparation for audit. Our OPEB balance is up 7.2% on the calendar year.
I think he's plugging in his computer.
What's he doing?
Need some help?
Up. Going up and then it come down. There's a snake coming up there. Get that snake.
it happened to him. Go.
One of these days, I'll get one of these that the battery doesn't die in an hour.
Another 20 years, you're not gonna be able to get down on your knees. Because if you do, you won't get back.
Back up.
So our balance in the OPEB trust fund is just under $2.5 million currently, so. Any questions? I'm gonna move on to cash balances.
Oh, you won't still do the audit.
The O'Neill's contract is up right now. We had a 3-year contract with them. So at our next meeting, I will be issuing an RFP for services, for audit services for.
When's the audit due, or is there any?
The audit,
date or-
the audit is due to the state of Michigan, the last day of March 31st. So we have to have it uploaded to the state by March 31st.
Didn't we run over this year?
This year we were on time. It was the prior year that we ran over. And that's when we brought in Woodhill Group. The first time, when we first brought in Woodhill to contract for some of our financial services for. All right, cash balances in August, you'll see our general fund is up a tick. That is due to the general operating millage being collected, which is due the last day of September. So if we were to run the cash balance for today, I think we would see that it's significantly higher than where it's at. Do expect to see that we will have a surplus so that we will be over the $6.4 million that we saw at the end of September of last year. In correlation with the funds that we're spending for COVID, we're down approximately $300,000 of that is interest, which is duty-free money that we don't have any restrictions on. And the delinquent tax fund you see has jumped up. That's because they raised the liability of the payment to the general fund, the second payment to the general fund that the board passed just this last meeting. With no questions, I'll give you a moment to review the check register.
She said.
She's on.
I had a question about all the money going to Northern Concrete Pipe. And Chris said that that was for the two bridges in 46. That's a lot of money,
How much was that?
Big culverts,
$163,000.
yeah, you know, big, those are, they're huge.
The road was tied up.
Mm-hmm.
Used to be, the farmers used to put those bridges in. Probably didn't cost hardly anything.
Who?
The farmers years ago used to go up there and fix that bridge and. But today we put a lot of money and time into it.
Those were on major roads too.
Yeah, that's true.
The good news is MDOT does reimburse us for those.
I would say MDOT will give you the one.
It's state roads, so those funds will be reimbursed.
Which drain did they dig for the M&M for the 509,000? M&M excavating?
That's drained.
Yeah, I'm just wondering which one of the drains.
Which drain?
Yeah. It was some pretty extensive work they had to do. If get up into those kind of dollars. So.
Start with the letter M.
What's that?
Does it start with the letter M?
M space and symbol space excavating company incorporated. The code is M&M01.
Said 509.
509, 635,
That is drain 96, the MDOT. They did the culvert replacements. So they got.
And that'll be reimbursed.
for 46 and 127?
They got, they had another payment made to them on the 13th of this month for almost just shade under 400,000 also.
What did Burford Plumbing? Thousand. 700.
One of the those. Right here.
Installation of a tankless water heater. Yep, that was a COA.
Should not aging. Oh, it wouldn't have been here. Should not aging.
The county jail probably uses a lot.
So, by far the biggest department in the county.
Gotta have clean prisoners.
Well, speaking of that,
Yeah, warm your cell by leaving it run, how I run, and all those fun things that they
I
like.
know if we could reduce indigent crime, we could save a lot of money.
Well, yeah,
Gonna put you in charge of that.
yeah,
Well,
be the next
the,
good need.
the root causes.
Lots of luck.
Well, if you could stop people from making stupid mistakes, we'd be all right. That's what it starts out at.
Yeah, it's job security for the.
I'm telling you, it's the truth.
Barring no more questions, I'll open up the discussion for the revenue and expenditure report for month 11 of the fiscal year through August of 2024.
No questions, we can move on.
Okay,
Yeah, a lot of that we covered in the amendments when
we covered a lot.
talked about,
Right.
a little different.
Treasury report. Do we have a treasurer? Oh, yeah, there. I said, do we have a treasurer? Do we have a treasurer? We have a treasurer. I don't. You know you do. Okay.
Okay, the investment report. The investments continue to grow. And do well. The feds are meeting this week, so I'm not sure what's gonna happen there, but I am monitoring that situation.
Yeah, the feds are gonna drop it a half. point, so-
Mhm, that's what they're saying.
a point, so I would expect we get a point knocked off of our. That's a big money, you know?
So, but I will continue to monitor that. The receipt report, does anybody have any questions on any receipted items? There substantial receipted items or any of the substantial bank transfers for that matter, if anybody has any questions on those?
Have you seen anything that's maybe you would question?
No, I'm not. Okay, so the other financial business, the foreclosing governmental unit report that you have in your packet, that's an annual report required by the state by September 30th. The numbers that you're seeing on that report are for the 2022 foreclosure sales tax year. That's the report that is required this year. It changed a couple years ago. I know, but that's what they require. That's what you're looking at.
Remember 2022.
I know, I don't, that's why I put it in the report for you so that you understand that it's not this year,
When I read
it's for
that.
2022. Yep. Yep, that's what they decided to go with a couple of years ago. So that's what you're looking at.
I have a couple questions for you. Okay, as I was reading down through here, it says down at number 8, well, let's go up one. It says sum of minimum bids for property sold at public auction, $68,053. Then it says total amount paid for property sold at public auction. Now, does that mean did just one person buy all this?
No. No, that, the minimum bids are for all of the properties that we had in foreclosure that year. So that's minimum bid. So that would be like, the taxes that were due, anything that were due on those properties that we needed to recover when we sold those
For
properties.
each one, you had to recover 68,000?
No, that's the total sum
Oh,
of.
that's a
of our
total sum, okay.
Of the 13 that were, because there's 13 that were
Mhm.
sold,
Yep,
they had to collect $68,053.68.
total.
Yeah, and it could have been any number for each one of those 13.
Yes, oh, yeah.
Total had to be up to 6.
But what you took in was 217,000?
Correct.
So then, if they owed, how does that work? They say they owe money to the mortgage.
This is not mortgage. It has nothing to do with mortgage. Mortgage, yep, tax sales are handled by my office. Mortgage are handled by the sheriff's department. It's a totally different thing.
Oh, it is, okay. So anyway, you took in that much. Do you have to give any of that money back to the residents?
If they file, that's what we were talking about last meeting. Now they have given them a path to, get back the surplus if that's what they
Okay.
choose to do, but they have to file to do that with the court.
If there was a surplus.
Correct.
Some of these may have been minimum bid.
Yeah.
The
On
last
occasion,
time-
that's.
The last time you talked about this, you said there was 3 families that had children. Was that something on Michigan Avenue or
I think it
something?
was a general statement. I don't think she
Or
called.
maybe they were still there or something, I can't remember.
There was homes this year that were still occupied. Yeah, and maybe that's what you're
Yeah,
thinking.
maybe that's what I'm thinking. Are they out now or?
I don't know.
And that's,
That becomes the responsibility of whoever buys that property at auction.
so that isn't our problem.
Nope, we don't have time to go through the eviction process on something like that because of the dates of the sales. So people understand and are very, very knowledgeable that when they buy these properties they are occupied. So it becomes,
No, I don't understand it because of the fact that there are so many jobs and people are closing down because they can't find anybody to work. And it seems like if you were losing your home, you would get a couple jobs.
I don't know, I can't not speak to that.
I don't get it either.
From our last discussion, probably people don't pay their property taxes. Trying to imagine scenarios, but is there, maybe people don't have hardly any equity in their property,
Right.
so they'll come with a big tax bill, well, take it, I don't have much, you know.
Yep. There are a million different scenarios out there for why this happens to people.
I mean, I don't understand it because another thing is put your taxes on with your payments when you're making a payment. But also, I was just told this too. If you just pay anything on this stuff, you can keep it. That's what I didn't understand. Why would?
Just communicate with your village, your city, your county, just communication is,
No, this is from the past. This isn't from right now, right?
this report is from the 2022 sale.
Okay, so we still gotta go through 2023.
Now you'll get next year. That's because that's the way the state has this report set up
Okay,
to report it to you.
that's a sad time. I know that. I would.
It is. But like I said, I can't tell you, communication is the key. But people, sometimes they get nervous, a piece of mail comes, they know that they're in trouble or, you know, in trouble financially or whatever their situation is, so they don't open the mail, they don't, that happens.
Do send letters, but I think that, I mean, there's so many different ways. You could read it in the paper or watch it on TV or.
We do personal visits, yeah.
Yeah, and texting, all that stuff, and that's why I don't understand. Apparently, I don't know if they're just doing it because they think, well, we'll live here for free and then we'll move on and. But houses, I would think, and getting something approved is becoming harder and harder.
How low a monthly payments do you accept?
$50.
It depends on how expensive.
Well, we let them set their own payments because that, if we,
$50 a month.
until they can get maybe into a better situation.
People would never pay it off that way.
And that's true, but it gets them out of the foreclosure cycle so that they can work on
They
it.
hope
They
they
can,
can gather enough to
Right.
make, instead of making the $50 a month, maybe they can make $100
yep,
a
and
month.
their situation might change dramatically, you know,
You may win the lotto.
yep.
Heck.
Yeah, and most of them, if they have extra, they do put it on.
Yeah.
But they know that if they put too big of a number on there, they're not gonna be able to do it. And then they just get frustrated, so they won't pay at all. So that's the reason that we allow them to set their own payment, because that's something they feel they can achieve. So,
Thank you, Terry.
thank you.
Anything else? I would make a motion that we suspend the finance meeting, go back into the regular meeting for the purpose of paying the bills.
Second.
Moved by George, supported by Tim to suspend the finance meeting, go back into the regular meeting, purpose of paying the bills. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Bills are paid. Any public comment? Board comment?
School? What? School? Oh, and somebody at one of my village meetings that was from Ithaca for doing probably the same thing you're doing. Do a list of questions you had to answer. Yep. Government? For government class? That's what it was, financial and civic literacy. Okay.
And they've changed it.
Easier to say.
Yeah.
Easy for you to say.
Did you learn anything valuable to take back to your class?
Good, good night to come. We talk about the budget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A good night.
If there's no other public comment or board comments,
We'll move that we adjourn.
Or
motion by Steve, supported by George to adjourn. All those in favor, say aye.
I.
Adjourn.